Hello, Reformed Mythologist Nate Morgan-Locke here with another episode of Behold the Comments. I am joined as ever by Eleanor of Lothlorien.
Good afternoon, Nate.
Hello. We're going to dive into some comments under recent Reformed Mythologist videos. Which video shall we start with?
Well, our biggest video of late is the most deeply Christian TV episode I've ever seen.
Okay, well, let's do that one.
Yeah.
Ex-Maverick Hunter KX said, Ernest watches anime. Do you know who that's a reference to?
I don't know who Ernest is.
This is who that's a reference to. Can you see the resemblance between that American cap-wearing gurning idiot and this British cap-wearing gurning idiot? Nice. I liked it. It made me smile. And I even sent back a message to say, ha ha ha.
So a rather beautiful, maybe the most beautiful theme we've ever had emerge in the comments has emerged in the comments of this video. Carol Julius Bussman 8076 said, Vinland Saga is my favourite manga, and the anime is excellent as well. And I think God used this story to bring me closer to Christ when I was still in the darkness. It is my understanding that the manga's creator, Makoto Yukimura, is very interested in Christianity, but is not a believer yet. So I would ask all the brothers and sisters to pray for him and his family, so that they might also come to faith. May the Lord Jesus Christ bless you all.
It was quite powerful, that one. And there's a couple more which we should read out as well, of people basically saying that this anime was instrumental in them either coming to faith or coming back to faith. So we had one from CL99. I really like Vinland Saga. Maybe this sounds stupid, but watching the second season and reading the manga played some part in me reading the whole Bible front to back and going back to church, and I'm grateful for it. And then we had another one from, I think that's Kill John Lennon. What does that mean? And why is there a picture of Humpty Dumpty? But nonetheless, let's overlook those things and look at the comment. Vinland Saga brought me closer to Christ. I rewatched the show twice, and God seems to like to speak to me through this show. I 100% recommend to everyone.
We see it again. Avery is chillin' said, man, you will love season 2. There are even more Christian themes and even scenes with actual Bible verses being read out loud. It's so amazing, and that season genuinely changed my life and made me rethink my entire personality. And then in the replies to that comment, Real Genji said, season 2 helped me become a Christian.
So, it's powerful stuff, this storytelling, isn't it?
Yeah.
One of the things that's so exciting about discovering a show like Vinland Saga, which seems to have been very popular, but then to recognize that we've got brothers and sisters in Christ, other people have joined the church as a result of watching a cartoon. And it's not a cartoon that's been made by, evangelicals trying to make people into Christians. I just think that's incredibly powerful. And it goes to show just how God can move in those kind of mysterious ways and use whatever he chooses to draw people to him. But as we said in the original video, it's so sincere, it's so explicit, and therefore it's very powerful. And there is that question about being in a post-Christian West. Now, obviously, this was made in the East, right? So it's Japanese. But the idea that culture in the West considers itself to have moved on from Christianity. And there's a big argument to say that, well, all of the things that it takes for granted have come from Christianity, and that, the Bible has kind of woven its way into the collective kind of mindset of people in the West because the Christian church has been so influential.
Because it's the air we breathe.
But that a lot of the time, people don't want to tell stories about Christian history because they want to move on from Christianity.
Yeah.
And so the only people who are interested, apparently, in looking at church history and exploring the sincerity of Christian faith through the ages must be Christians who are kind of doing a bit of faith genealogy. But it is fascinating to see that there is a kind of evangelistic value in doing church history, even if you're not trying to sort of say, hey, look, Christian faith gets you through everything, but just genuinely wrestling with the ideas, which is what this show does so brilliantly.
Speaking of, everyone wants you to watch season 2.
Well, everyone will be pleased to know that I have started watching season 2. That's right. And the gear shift is quite dramatic. They were also right. I don't know that I could make endless videos on Vinland Saga. It would be cool, but it might get a bit repetitive. And there's lots of other stories to explore, but there's definitely another Vinland Saga.
Need to wrap it up.
Yeah, we can't leave everyone hanging. We got to the middle.
Good things come in threes.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Toy Story. She means Toy Story. Okay, let's look at the comments from Behold the Comments, episode 7. So Woma Caliph said, not sure if you've already discussed the animated film Flow, but I just watched it and really enjoyed it. I was struck by how the imagery recalls the Noah flood. So I did respond saying, I haven't seen this, but Haunted by the Ruins of Humanity sounds interesting. Thanks for the recommendation. We'll check it out. It's already out in the UK. It's been out in the US for ages. It won the Best Animated Feature at the Oscars 2025. And yeah, it's looking very good. And we did nearly go and see it for a preview thing, but we didn't.
Yeah.
And then I was busy when it came out, and then now I just need to do it.
Earlier today, you weren't aware that it was out.
I had forgotten. It had slipped my mind.
We had this discussion. It came out on the 21st of March.
Ages ago. There's an awful lot of media to consume, isn't there?
There is.
You should be selective.
Yeah.
But I do want to see this. Are you keen to see it? Have you seen the trailer?
I'm interested in seeing it, yeah.
Okay, here's a comment from @SpitShineSneakers. Great name. I really appreciated the lecture that you posted about sub-creation. Do you guys have more online resources for writing advice? I don't live in the UK, so I can't sit in on your workshops. I love what your channel is doing, though, in terms of analysing stories, but I'm really interested in learning how to apply it to writing original stories. And there just aren't that many workshops out there specifically combining fiction and theology. Well, it's good to know that that video is appreciated. And I am really interested in not just the origin of stories, why do we have them, the kind of existential question of story and philosophy of storytelling, the theology, like what makes sense of stories. I'm not just interested in that, or interested in studying the stories that are out there in the culture. Also, really interested in the craft of storytelling and just supporting Christians in their kind of work of writing stories. And occasionally, very occasionally, people will send us an email and we'll arrange a call to say, hey, I'm working on this. Would I be able to have a bit of your time? I'd like some insight. Now, if it got inundated, then I might need to start charging large amounts of money for consultancy. But I'd be really interested to help someone think through the story that they want to tell and how to tell it as well as they can.
Yeah. We've got some interviews on the channel that you've done with writers where you discuss a little bit of what it looks like to write a book.
Let's move on to the next video. What's that going to be?
This email was so good, I had to make a video about it. AKA, Nate doesn't respond to a seminary friend's email for
4 months. Yeah. I have since responded. So I did basically say I made this video for you in response. But really it's about Lewis and Tolkien and that sort of stuff and thinking about mythology and its origins from a Christian perspective.
We had 2 comments, one from SOT-S1689 and one from friend of the show Lily McCulloch 9581, both saying that they want you to do a video about Mythopoeia.
Mythopoeia, yes, I did reference it in that video. It is a poem by J.R.R. Tolkien. It begins like this: to one who said that myths were lies and therefore worthless, even though breathed through silver. Philomythos to mesomythos. You look at trees and label them just so, for trees are trees, and growing is to grow. You walk the earth and tread with solemn pace, one of the many minor globes of space. A star's a star, some matter in a ball, compelled to courses mathematical, amid the regimented cold inane, where destined atoms are each moment slain. That was quite a long reading. You weren't expecting it to be that long, but there it is. That's the introduction to Mythopoeia, which means making of myths. We might do a video on that. If you're a big Tolkien fan, please let us know. Next one, Skyoricheg friend of the show, says, amongst other things, this was quite the substantial comment, the Bible itself foreshadows Christ's dying and rising. Why should we be surprised other religions picked up on it? Now, I thought that was a really interesting point when we think about the parallels or pagan Christs that we see in other mythologies. Well, what if you've got types? So typology is a major theme within Old Testament studies and trying to work out, okay, so how are these characters in the Old Testament types of Christ, and how are those types of Christ preparing Old Testament Israel for the work of the true Christ? So I thought that was a really helpful point to recognize that you've got a kind of pattern or a theme or a function that a character is performing in the Old Testament, which may also have resonance with some of these kind of parallel stories in the other mythologies, if those parallels are indeed legitimate. So with 3 videos done, it's time to ask the question that's on everyone's lips. What you been watching?
We should have a jingle for that.
We should. Okay then, what you been watching?
So it's currently Lent, and I give up all things social media, YouTube, and this year also Netflix, because last year I found that Netflix just replaced YouTube and I was just watching rubbish on Netflix.
Okay.
So I had to give that up too.
Okay.
So the last time I went home to see my parents, I took a load of DVDs from their house with me so that I could, if I wanted to sit down and watch something.
Old school.
Watch a DVD.
Physical media.
So this weekend I decided I'd watch The Prince of Egypt because that was one of the DVDs I took off of my parents. And it is just, I know it's old now, but it is just still truly a brilliant film.
It's a classic. Yeah, it was very powerful.
Yeah. I don't think I've watched it since I was a child. Mm-hmm. And watching it as an adult now, it is really powerful. And I was just sitting there going, wow, God is great. God is so powerful. I don't think that struck me as much as a child. It was just like, oh, yay, fun film.
Yeah, that is an interesting one. Did you bring home any non-biblical story DVDs? Or because it's Lent, are you now like, okay, I'm only watching stuff that's based on Bible stories?
No, so the reason I brought home Prince of Egypt is because I've been doing Bible in a year from start to finish. So February time or something, I was in Exodus and doing that. And that had kind of got me in the mood to watch it.
Yeah.
And I didn't get round to watching it till last weekend. But I also brought back The Little Princess and The Secret Garden. Okay. And I've watched both of those since bringing them back as well. The Secret Garden I watched... And it's the BBC TV series. And I got to the end of it and went, this isn't quite how I remembered it. Mm-hmm. And then looked it up and realised that my brain had amalgamated the BBC TV series with the Warner Brothers film featuring Maggie Smith. Okay. And it was just very funny seeing how my childhood brain had mushed
you put
the
both
together.
The versions in together. But you prefer the BBC version? So
it was actually really interesting to watch both back to back and see how my visual memory of it was very much tied to the film, because the film has a filmic, higher quality look to it. Mm-hmm. But then I felt that it had to do some things that films have to do, like it had to have an antagonist. So it made the housekeeper the antagonist throughout the whole film. Whereas in the book and in the TV series, she's only the antagonist at the start. Then she sees how Mary is good for Colin. And because she loves Colin, she's like, well, this is great. Yeah. And I felt that the TV series did the character development and study a lot better than the movie did, because they're different mediums and they're trying to do different things.
Yeah. And character stuff is like, it takes much longer to do in any depth. And film's not necessarily, can only show you so much because it's got such a short time in which to do it. Yeah.
But in some ways, the film had been really thoughtful about how to get an emotionally impactful scene. Mm-hmm. So right at the end, when Colin and Mr. Craven reunite, in the TV series, they just bump into each other and it's like, yay. Okay. But in the film, they have this really dramatic moment where Colin is playing this sort of blind man's buff game or something. He has a blindfold on. And that's when Mr. Craven comes in, and there's this whole thing of he touches Mr. Craven before he sees him.
Okay.
And then the blindfold gets removed and it's this big emotional reunion.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting how the movie did some things well and the TV series did some things well.
Yeah. Interesting. On your point about reading the Bible in a year and then watching stuff because it reminds you of that, I was reading the Bible in 1 year a long time ago, and it was early in January, and I was reading Genesis and the patriarchs, and I got to the point about, I think it was Dinah and the Shechemites, and Judah and Simeon, I think, go and attack the Shechemites because they've attacked Dinah, their sister, and it reminded me of the bit in The Godfather when I think it's Sonny goes to find out what's happened to his sister, whose name I've currently forgotten, but she's been beaten up by her husband. And so there's this incredibly powerful moment where James Caan bites his fist because he like sees that she's got this black eye and she's obviously been abused. And then he goes and finds this guy and kind of attacks him. And then it just made me put this connection between the patriarch stories of Genesis and The Godfather, which I think I will have to my dying day, which is because it is a patriarchal society in Genesis and is a strongly patriarchal society in Godfather, that this is how families operate and this is how these kind of things are dealt with. So yeah, I really struggle to read Genesis without thinking of Don Corleone or Michael or anyone else.
So Nate, what have you been watching?
Well, Eleanor of Lothlorien, I've been growing sick and tired of all this woke nonsense that's on the telly these days, and so I decided to go back to the year 2000 and watch a film that doesn't pass the Bechdel test with flying colours. It is harder to think of a story which was so utterly contemptuous in the face of the Bechdel test. Do you want to explain what the Bechdel test is to anyone who doesn't know?
I can explain what the
I'm
Bechdel
sure
test
everyone
is.
knows, but go on.
The Bechdel test is just a test where you see whether there are two women in the film who have a conversation with each other that is not about a man, and it's meant to be a test that shows that the film is considerate of women's opinions and thoughts and
perspectives, issues.
I was going to say input. Yeah. Society and whatever's going on in the film.
So now you want to know what this film was. So utterly based is this film. And I've actually seen it twice in the, not too distant past. And this film is Russell Crowe playing against Paul Bettany, and it's called Master and Commander of the Far Side of the World. And I love this film so much. Now, I don't love it because it doesn't have a meaningful conversation between two female characters. In fact, the idea of two female characters is the furthest thing that could be from your mind when you're watching it, because it's about a ship during the Napoleonic Wars, and it's about all the relationships between the different officers and crewmates of this ship. Russell Crowe plays the captain, Paul Bettany plays the ship's doctor. Those two are friends. They're very different personalities, and all sorts of strange and wonderful things happen on this ship. There's lots of biblical references. There's huge amounts going on, but it's just such a brilliant piece of storytelling, and I would recommend it. As I say, really enjoyed it, and I think the themes that come out of it are fascinating, and maybe it might actually do a video on it at some point. Who knows? Well, what you've been watching, let us know in the comments if you've been watching something fascinating and something that's scratched an itch or something that's got you thinking. We would love to know, and we might even watch it. We obviously won't watch everything because it simply isn't the time to watch all the stuff that gets recommended, even by one other person. Okay, let alone all the comments. Let's move to our final video and the comments underneath that. It is Adolescence Reaction. This was me and Thomas Thorogood from Thomas Thorogood's YouTube channel, and also of the parish of Speak Life, because he works here as our media producer. We were chatting about the Netflix mini-series Adolescence, and one of the comments that we got under this was, at no point in this show can you tell the religion or lack thereof of the characters. So a lot of assumptions are being made here. Now I should point out the way we framed our reaction to this was to say this is a show in which there is no reference to God, there is no reference to spiritual life, there is no faith. It's not part of the lives of the people in the story, and at no point in the storytelling does the issue of faith come up. So it feels like a godless world, and I don't mean that necessarily pejoratively. It's just that there is no God described, referenced at any point within the storytelling. And that at the same time, it's also a hopeless story. It's very, very bleak, and no one in the show seems to have answers to deal with the questions that it brings up. Now, clearly, the conversation that's been happening online and culturally about this in the media about this program is on a range of different things to do with incel culture, toxic masculinity, knife crime, British violence statistics, violence against women. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that people are talking about, and Thomas and I wanted to just have a conversation about what's in the show from a Christian perspective and to try to kind of unpack why it feels so bleak. You've not seen it, have you?
I still haven't seen it.
Okay.
No. Everything I say, I preface
Yeah.
by saying I have not seen this show as of yet.
Okay. And I mean, you have edited the video that we made on it, so you've had quite a lot of the spoilers.
Yeah.
But I do think the other thing to say is the reason why I think it's broken sort of out of the gravitational pull of most media that comes out is because of the gimmick of the one shot. And I think that was both a brilliant creative choice because it gets people talking about something. There's a thing about this show, even before we get into the issues of adolescence and all the other stuff that comes up. And I do think it had an impact on the actors and the performances they were able to give. So without it being a single take, I really don't think people will be talking about the show as much.
Arguably, it also might have an impact on the watcher in terms of saying, you have to look here. We're not going to cut away and give you a break.
Yeah, there is something about that because you're not cutting away. Now, every TV show is doing that. When they show you what they want to show you, they are controlling what you're viewing. They're in complete control of your experience of the story. But because it's not cutting away, you feel that relentless thing so much more.
Yeah. I think also in response to the comment you read out, they're trying to argue that you can't make an assumption about the characters' faiths and religions. But I think from what we've seen in your thoughts on Vinland Saga, when you see a properly religious family or religious person depicted, it's going to come through in your TV show or your film or whatever.
Yeah.
Because when you do know the love of Christ and when you have hope in him, it is going to infect your entire life. And especially because of what this show's about and what the characters are going through. If they did have any hope or faith in Christ, I think we would see it.
100%. And there's also the thing of Christians commit terrible crimes as well. And you want to say, yes, absolutely, Christians commit those terrible crimes. And when people are dealing with the fallout of those terrible crimes, what is the framework and the worldview and the philosophy that they come to that fallout with? What can they use to try to come to terms with real evil in the world? And what's, I think, quite impressive about Adolescence is that it shows the impotence of these institutions to actually even attempt to answer any of these questions. And that's why it's so bleak.
Yeah.
You need Christ in order to be able to speak the Christian approach to those things. And what's such a terrible shame is that you've shown a story in which no one can give anyone any real hope or any real comfort because you're just left with an evil thing has happened. Well, please do remember that media consumption is optional. You are under no obligation to watch The Prince of Egypt or Master and Commander of the Far Side of the World. I've been Reformed Mythologist Nate Morgan Locke. She's been Eleanor of Lothlorien, and we're glad you were here.